inches of snow tonight.
Mm.
I think he's worried about 90 to 100% humidity.
The Cuyahoga County Public Works Procurement and Contracting Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 4th, 2015 will please come to order. I have been asked to chair this meeting as the chairman, Councilman Germana, is not available for today. And the clerk will please call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Ms. Conwell,
Here.
Mr. Greenspan,
Here.
Ms. Simon. There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody who has signed in for public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Thank you very much. In your packet, you have the minutes from the last meeting, which was on December 17th. Is there a motion relative to those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the minutes say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, so we have Councilman Greenspan as abstaining, but we still have 3 affirmative votes, so the minutes are approved. Under item number 5, matters referred to the committee, the first item is Resolution 2015-0023. Ms. Janine.
Resolution number 2015-0023, a resolution making an award on requisition number 32046 to Johnson Controls in the amount not to exceed $1,103,352 for preventative maintenance services for Medicis and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at the Justice Center complex, including jails 1 and 2 and the Juvenile Justice Center for the period 4/1/2015 through 3/31/2018, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with said award in this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Ms. Teagan.
Thank you. This is a contract we did publicly advertise. We received 1 bid from Johnson Control. We have done work with Johnson Control on our buildings, and this is a contract to basically do the maintenance for our monitoring systems that we have for our fire protection, our HVAC system. So this is a contract that is essential to the function of the buildings, and usually what happens is when we put in the monitors, the monitors are a particular brand name, and to provide that maintenance, it's usually that company that can only provide that maintenance. Error on the side of conservativeness, we do publicly bid these, so that if there is somebody out there that feels that they can maintain their systems, that we give them an opportunity to bid. In this case, we did only receive 1 bid, and that's Johnson Control, and like I said, we have done work with them, and we're pleased with the service that they provide.
Questions by my colleagues? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to Director Teagan, did we use this same company with the last contract?
We did, yes.
Okay, and how long is this for? It's a 3-year contract?
This is a 3-year contract, and our law department has been pretty good about giving us language in each of the contracts that if for some reason we need to, we feel the need to exit that contract, we can, with no penalty.
Okay, and for so this is for maintenance services.
That's correct.
So I'm just in the last contract cycle, did it come under bid? Was there any money not used or anything like that?
So what we've done is we have a lot of buildings that have this system or a similar system. There's a value to having larger contracts because, as we've always talked about, we gain savings by having larger contracts, but at the same time, having too big of a contract also causes some problems as far as the staff that's assigned, and if bad things go wrong in multiple places. So what we did with this particular contract, we're trying to get them all on the same cycle, and lumped together in areas that make sense. So what we did is we, from previous contracts, the Johnson Control project or contract that we had previous included our administrative building, which we no longer have, and the Marion building, which is now being, which was also purchased. So we had to take those out of the contract. And then what we did is we took the new Juvenile Justice Center over on Quincy, and we added it to this contract. So it's actually a larger contract from what it had been before, even though we took some of the buildings out. And I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
And this building's not in there because
No,
technically.
correct, we don't maintain
And
it.
what about the Justice Center?
This includes the Justice Center as well as the Juvenile Justice Center. So two of the biggest properties that we own are within this contract. And it's on a time and material basis, so we're only paying for when they actually do testing or they do maintenance. We verify those hours, and we only pay them on the services that they provide.
Okay, so this contract is up to that amount?
Correct.
So, okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you. With the Juvenile Justice Center, are they the current, have they been the providers from day one?
I'm not sure. There was a warranty period that we had. I'll have to check on that to see if they were. I want to say yes, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay. And insofar as preventative maintenance, I'll ask this because Mr. Gallagher's not here, but are dampers included in the preventive maintenance protocol?
The inspection of them, it is not. That's why we're doing them with our own forces.
But are the dampers tied into the HVAC system itself?
They are.
So we'll be maintaining and inspecting the dampers separately from the system they're tied into?
That's correct. At some point, we could probably include that inspection in these contracts if we wanted to. What this does is if this opens and closes the dampers, so they're connected with that, but it's not necessarily the inspection that is included in that. But in the future, that might be something that we would want to include.
So if an inspection takes place, or as we're going through now and trying to get all of the dampers operational, which in these 4 facilities, there's still some we're not 100% operational on the damper side yet, if I remember the report.
That's correct.
But the coordination between the dampers becoming operational and this controlling system is happening at the same time. Meaning that we're not either upgrading or fixing dampers that have been inoperable without consultation with Johnson Control to ensure that they work, the two systems work together.
All right, so.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, and so Johnson Control is the mechanism that opens and closes. So you might have within your air duct, you might have a damper that has a Johnson controlled sensor on it, but then you might have another damper that doesn't necessarily have a sensor on it or a monitor on it. So this one would tell us whether it's working, but this one might be broke and we would never know because of the Johnson Control.
Right, but my point is, so the broken one in your example, as it's being fixed, is are you saying that's being tied into the Johnson Control system?
No, and it doesn't need to be. The Johnson Control is hold on a second. In most cases it is, but not all cases.
And why would we not want all dampers? I forget it's a damper. Any of the devices in the ductwork, as an example, shouldn't they all be coordinated in their activities so that in the event of an incident where dampers were closed, either by the sensor triggered it or by the system itself as part of suppressing a larger activity, don't we want all of those under one controlling system?
They might be all interconnected, but the sensor is separate from the series of the dampers.
And is it not our protocol to have every damper with its own sensor?
I don't believe so, no. I'll have to check on that,
All right.
but I don't believe it is.
You understand where I'm going?
Yeah.
It's like having, traffic lights all on one system so that you can modify the traffic signalization as needed. And,
Right, but in a traffic signal example, you might only have one controller that controls multiple
Okay.
intersections.
All right. All right, yeah, can you just find, I have no
Sure.
issues moving this on, but if you can get back with the answers on that, that would
Okay.
be helpful. Thank you.
Director, how long have we been working with Johnson Control in this area?
I think they have always been a provider of the systems and the maintenance for many, many years.
And Director, if we make the adjustments needed so that it would be an apples to apples comparison, is our unit cost for this contract going forward, is it the same as what it has been, or is it more, or is it less?
We tried to do that comparison, and we believe the price is very close. The fact that we added a whole separate building in, that's a newer building. It's hard to do an apple-to-apple comparison, but we think we're pretty close on our price.
And did the prior contract use all the money not to exceed, or did we not need to use all of it?
Again, I have to check on that. I'm not sure if we needed it, but again, it's a not to exceed number, and we're paying for the hours that they're actually there.
And were there any SBE goals on this contract?
No, there was not. There was there was a 10% required, but they got their exemption, right?
That's correct. Rich Opie from the Office of Procurement and Diversity. I'm the purchasing manager. There's a 10% SBE goal set. Now, the vendor requested a waiver on that due to the technical nature and that they could not find a certified factory trained sub to meet that goal. We hope to reach the goal of 10%, but it is a specialty area, and so we're okay with this forwarding with this vendor.
So what you're saying is that they did not propose the 10%, but we're hoping during the course of the contract that they are gonna find a capable subcontractor and reach that goal. Is that what you're saying?
No, they requested a full waiver, so they would not pursue a subcontractor based on the fact that they could not find a subcontractor to meet the technical requirements. They wanted to find a factory-trained sub, and there is no one available in their search.
Ms. Conwell?
I'll follow up on Councilman Miller's question. So in the previous contract, did we know that, did they waive before the SBE go, the 10%?
There was the prior contract we issued an RFP for that also. That was due on January 19th, 2012. There was a 20% SBE goal on that. We did have one submission from Johnson Controls. I don't have anything specific on that in terms of their response to the SBE goal. I can get back with you on that.
Okay. So in moving forward, if we know they're not going to meet the SBE goal, and going back to Director, you said they were the only person that bid on this.
Correct.
This contract. So how do we, to get the 10% met, depending on what he finds out, if they met it last time or if they did a full waiver, what is your intention in moving forward and getting them to meet that goal?
Well, and I would, I think there's two ways to look at that. By the type of the work that they do, it's one company and they don't necessarily sub out subcontracting work, so there's really not an opportunity for that. Because we do have the opportunity that potentially there might be some work that they would have to do that goes beyond their capability. They could in fact bring in a sub, but normally I don't think they have subs that they bring in to do the work. So, I guess I would, and maybe Rich might speak a little bit more to this, but whenever they set the SBE goals, they're looking at what are the opportunities. If you know there's no opportunity, why would you set a goal? That's probably why there's a minimum goal of 10%, because knowing that they're very limited. Is that right?
That's
Right,
correct,
Rich?
Director. I met with my director, Lenora Lockett, on this morning, and she said that it's correct, that she set the SBE goal as 10% based on the fact that it was a specialty area, difficult to find anyone. She had hoped to reach that goal, but she did know it was a technical project and was agreeable to the selection and the waiver. So she made a decision on that waiver also.
I would point out to everybody the results of the recent disparity study, which showed that only 14% of the contracts that we put out even have SBE goals, and in this case, we did have a goal, but we're not able to meet it. So I think that provides some impetus for the enhanced techniques that are being proposed in response to the disparity study, that we need to do more. So.
And I just want to follow up. I just think if that's our intent to have SBE goals and to get, the work out there, then we need to figure out how this department outreaches to get that knowledge out there that we have some SBE goals that are not met because of technical specialty or whatever you want to call them. So I'd like to hear something of how your office is going to address that. I'm sure Lenora has probably the statistics of what companies or contracts that we do always have full waivers or not meeting the SBE criteria. So I would just like to see that to make sure that we're doing everything, pushing forward, that our SBE goals are met at all times. I know, there should be some rare cases, but if this is on a continual basis, that we're most likely going to always go with Johnson Controls, or, maybe they can do a little bit more on their end. If we're pushing it, we're the drivers, they're gonna. Thank you.
And what our office does, Office of Procurement and Diversity, if I may, we supply no bid sheets to all the vendors who register and have them available. So if a vendor is unable to bid for a particular reason, they supply us with feedback. We issued no bid sheets for the 3 vendors that were what we call plan holders, and we received no bid sheets back on this.
Since this contract does not start until 4/1/2015, am I correct that we would not need to do second reading suspension on this contract?
That's correct.
Okay. If there are, Diamond?
Thanks. I just have a comment on the disparity study and outreach. Unfortunately, this seems to be a sole source contract, and Johnson is a huge company, and I'm not sure that we are the driver in this when there's only one provider of this service. I know we've got to do better, but this is, I think, one of those cases where if this is the only service for this system, then we're kind of stuck, and it's unfortunate. I don't know if we can leave it to them to do it. I think we need to do it, whatever that's going to take. That's my only comment. And go ahead.
I'm sorry, this did go out to 38 vendors in Bi-Speed that were registered under this type of work. So there was a notification that went out to them. Like Rich said, only 3 of them pulled bid packages. So,
so I think what Ms. Simon is saying is that we got to go out and do some beating of the bushes and try to find some people out there who might be able to subcontract for some of this work and or provide competition, and if and there's a lot of people out there looking for work, and Councilman Jones always talks about entrepreneurship. If there's nobody out there, well, somebody can get themselves properly trained and set up a company and maybe get some work. So it's out there.
For workforce development, Mr. Chair. I mean, it'd be nice to get some specs for what particular types of work the subcontractors would be performing, and then we can take those specs to workforce and try to coordinate with that. I think that's really, we have the infrastructure in place. I don't think council people, unless they want to, need to knock on doors. We already have a system, but we need to connect the dots, and here's a really concrete way to do it. Thank you.
In the meantime, we need to have our buildings maintained. So do we have a motion to favorably refer Resolution 2015-0023 for second reading to the full council? You so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Ms. Conwell to favorably refer Resolution 2015-0023 to the full council for second reading. Any further discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is favorably recommended. Next, we have Resolution 2015-0024. Ms. Janine.
Resolution number 2015-0024, a resolution authorizing an amendment to contract number CE 1100721 with American Bridge Company for rehabilitation of Columbus Road Lift Bridge over the Cuyahoga River in the city of Cleveland for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $722,620.44, authorizing the county executive to execute the amendment and all other documents consistent with this resolution, authorizing the county engineer on behalf of the county executive to make an application for allocation from county motor vehicle $5 license tax funds in the amount of $72,262.04 to fund said amendment and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Ms. Tewan.
Thank you. This is a change order for the Columbus Road Lift Bridge. As you know, they've been working on this project for quite some time. It was finally opened in December of 2014. And as they went through the project and they were working through the project, there were some unforeseen conditions, change orders required that were needed to actually complete the structure. You have before you a change order for the amount of $722,000. I would say close to half of that, not quite half, 315,000 of that was for steel that was needed, additional steel that was needed to balance the lift structure. You have two towers, you have a center spanned lift structure that needs to be balanced out. And they needed to order additional steel plates to help with the balancing. So the better it's balanced, the less stress that it puts on the mechanics of the working bridge.
So that was not anticipated when it was designed?
Well, there were some counterweights that were included in that, but what happens is as the work is being done, there's members that are being removed and replaced. There's the housing that the operator sits in. There's estimates of weights of what that center span should weigh, but it's not an exact science. So what usually happens is once that gets in there, they have their counterweights, but then there's some adjustments that need to be done, and this would be the adjustments.
And outside of the 315,000, what was the rest of it for?
So there were just a change in quantities where, when we do a project, we have line item quantities and there might be, so many cubic yards of aggregate, and we actually do the measurements and we make the adjustments for actually measured quantities. So we have unit line items for that. There were some line items of when and if you remember, they actually had the two towers, they rehabbed the two towers, they took the center span in that went up and down. They actually took it out of the bridge itself, they floated it down, they demoed that. They actually built a brand-new center span with new structural steel, and then they floated that in and they connected it. Once they floated that in, it wasn't an exact fit. There were some modifications to get that to fit perfectly in there, and the trimming, the adding, the subtracting to get that to fit exactly in. There's some line items, and basically those are time and material items that our guys were keeping track of, to get that center span to fit in and to sit in there very nicely.
Was there anything that was added to the scope of the project, or is it all in terms of these adjustments, corrections, unforeseen conditions, et cetera?
There were some owner-requested items. By way of example, there were some fiber optic lines. And keep in mind, when we say owner-requested, the city of Cleveland is actually the owner-operator of this. So they did have some requests in there. There was a fiber optic line that was owner-requested. There were some safety items that were requested based on the operator's comfort factor. Not necessarily would be required, but there was, by way of example, when the operator climbs up the span, there might be a step that, might be a 2-foot gap that's wide open. That's not necessarily required that gap needs to be bridged, but we put a handrail on that so he could grab the handrail while he's crossing that gap. So just things that when you build the bridge and when it's actually up and you have the operator there, he might question and request some things. So there were some minor changes to that for that reason.
Am I correct that this was the fifth of 5 subsidiaries?
The fifth of 5, what do you mean?
5 subsidiaries, that this was not the only subsidiary on this project, there were additional subsidiaries.
You mean amendments?
Yes,
Oh, this is the 5th, that's correct.
and how much was the total cost of all of the amendments?
Total for the amendments is at 1.8, and it's a $32 million project.
So you're talking 6%?
Yes.
Approximately.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a federally funded project to a considerable degree. Was there a DB contract process on this?
I'm sure there was. Hold on, let me see if I have that in my information. I do not have that information in my package, but I can get that to you.
Okay, that would be appreciated. Does this amendment complete the project?
It does not. There's still, in fact, the project is substantially complete. It's open to vehicular traffic, but there's still a few items of work that need to be done, landscaping, final painting, touch-up work that still needs to be done when the weather's a little nicer.
So do we anticipate another amendment?
There may be a smaller amendment to final the project out.
Questions by my colleagues? Ms. Simon?
I see the city of Cleveland has a component share of the cost, and that's looks like 10%. Have they approved the change order, or do we wait for them, or do they need to go through that process?
They have been involved in all of the discussions. Usually we don't get a pre-approval for change orders, particularly when they're owner requested change orders. So we go through the process, and they're pretty good about understanding that they're responsible for paying those change orders.
Ms. Conwell?
Or through the chair to the director, how long will this we've put a lot of money into this bridge. I know it's necessary, but I'm just, thinking, we're gonna maintain every year the bridge? Are we responsible for that?
There's discussions about who actually owns this bridge. As of right now, the county owns the bridge, because it's over 20 feet and it's over a waterway. This is the only movable structure that Cuyahoga County has. The fact that it's being operated by the city of Cleveland, there's some discussion that the city of Cleveland should be the owner. And this bridge has been around for so long, there's not clear documentation on who owns what and that, but the city of Cleveland does operate it. So they have they have a dog in this fight, so to speak, you know, and this is the only one that operable or movable bridge that we actually own. So, I mean, I wouldn't be heartbroken if the city wanted to take over the ownership of it, but as of right now, we own it.
So right now we own it, which means we maintain it.
Yes, to some extent. It's the minor maintenance is still the city's responsibility. So if, you know, snow removal and that sort of stuff, that's their responsibility.
Okay. Because I know you stated in past committees that we kind of, you go around and you maintain Public Works maintains our viewing our county bridges and structures that we own to make sure that we're giving them a grade and make sure that they're
Right.
properly maintained. So I just was wondering on this, after all this money has went in, who is technically going to be responsible
So
for
we'll still inspect it, and if there's maintenance, hopefully there won't be any maintenance for a while.
Right.
But on a normal structure on a county route, that we would be responsible for inspecting it, and on a county route, we maintain it. So, if there's a change in the responsibilities here, you know, that would have to be done with the contract.
Okay, so we'll inspect it annually.
That's correct.
Okay, and this is a question off topic. I'm glad you brought it up. Snow removal on county bridges. Do we do that on most bridges or?
No, that's ultimately the city's responsibility for minor maintenance, snow removal. On the sidewalks as well as the roadway portion.
And going back, last question, going back to this, I guess the beginning of this, I kind of remember this and thought it was over with, but do you feel, how do I want to put it? In the initial contract, was there other companies that bid on this?
You don't have that, Rich, do you? I'm sure there was.
And that was back, when did we start this?
I
Was it
think
in
this was one of
2012?
the, yeah, it was one of the very first ones that we did as a group, so it might have even been in 11 that we sold that.
So I guess the information I would just want you to follow up with me on is if there were other, and there probably were other contracts or bids, you know, all these additional, and I know they couldn't be foreseen, did that have any impact on one of the other bidders being knocked out of the
Okay.
original contract?
I'll have to figure out how I present that to you, but I'll look at it.
Director, is there a need for a second reading suspension on this contract?
I would say, yes, there should be. Obviously, we can't pay the contractor until we get this passed, so I would say that there would be a need to pass it under second reading.
I have received a lot of complaints about lack of prompt payment on county work, so I don't want to add to that. So
You mean from other departments and not
yeah,
from
yeah,
Public
I'm not
Works?
talking. Yeah, I'm talking.
Yeah, all right.
I'm talking across the board now. So I'm going to support that request, but before I do, I'm going to call upon Councilman Greenspan.
Great, thank you. In this original budget, it was 32 million or so. What was the contingency of the original project?
Roadway projects do not have contingencies.
Okay, so it's not, okay. You made a statement earlier that there's a an owner requirement to add fiber.
Yes.
But then you alluded that the city made the request, but later you said the county owns the bridge.
Well, I probably should have said operator request.
Operator.
Operator request and not necessarily owner request.
And was that outside the original scope of the project?
It was not included in the original.
Okay.
The city of Cleveland, with their movable structures, they're more aggressive on putting cameras on the bridges so that the operator can see if somebody's on the bridge that shouldn't be on the bridge
Right.
before they open it up, and that the fiber optic basically connects the cameras, and it also gives the opportunity for what's being seen on those cameras to be sent to a centralized location that the city of Cleveland has.
And so that request came in, who paid for the fiber?
It's the same distribution, the federal and there's federal, county, and city money. It's the same distribution.
Now, why would that be? Would we have the ability to say no?
We do have the ability to say no, but, I personally think it's a good idea, to be able to have the operator view cameras as well as if there's a remote site.
No, maybe, let me rephrase the question. If the operator made any request, do we have the authority to say no? Because that we're financially bound by that decision.
Yes, and we
Or that
have said,
request,
yes,
okay.
we have said no on it, on other requests. Yeah,
Okay.
we've said no for other requests that they have, just because we said yes. We agreed that it was a good idea and we included it.
And this specific improvement of the cameras, is this consistent with Cleveland's other lift
Yes.
bridge operations?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously, the last point, just on the ownership issue, and obviously we know we're having those same discussions with the
Pedestrian bridge.
yeah, I was gonna quote a Cleveland councilman's bridge to nowhere statement, but with the pedestrian bridge, are we in the same situation? Where are we with determining ownership, and how quickly are we gonna resolve that?
For this, well, the way it stands right now, we own it.
Okay,
And I probably was a little too anxious to share the fact that there's been discussions otherwise. So as of right now, we own it. That's an issue. If the city wants to approach us to take ownership of it, they can do that. So it's very preliminary stages of
but, all right,
construction.
so as far as ownership is concerned, though, we have a definitive
Yes.
agreement is it an agreement or is it an understanding?
I think it's more of an understanding because, this bridge goes back many, many years. So it's more of an understanding. I don't think there's a document in place that says where we own it other than researching the Ohio Revised Code.
Okay. And as far as the maintenance and the CapEx and the other items, in this project, obviously, we understand it's a tripart agreement, but on a going forward basis, who's responsible for maintenance and capital improvements, even minor capital improvements?
So general maintenance, snow removal, cleaning, sidewalk is the city's responsibility. Say there's the operations of it, so if there's mechanical that goes wrong, that's the city's responsibility. If it's part of the structure, the towers, the abutments, the structural part of it, it's our responsibility.
So painting, obviously, doesn't need to be repainted. Painting's the county's responsibility.
That's correct.
Does Cleveland pay us? Do they lease it from us, or is it
They do not.
okay. All right, thank you.
Director, it seems like the city has a good deal. why would they even contemplate asking to take over ownership and take on the responsibility of the capital maintenance costs?
Well, I think it's for consistency, because they do own all the other movable bridges in Cleveland, so this is kind of that outlier out there that's different from all the other ones.
I've found that most people value money more than consistency.
Mr. Chair, I have a question to the law department on risk management. If there's no lease, even if it's $1 a year lease, I probably shouldn't. I'm not going to go there. Why would what are the risk management issues surrounding this situation? We own it. There's no lease. They're using it. Should a Cleveland employee be injured on the job, do we have the liability associated with that?
I can only respond. Obviously, your question is a very good question, and a lot of the bridges that are on county routes are in the same situation, and it has been established by the Ohio Revised Code when the municipality has the maintenance responsibilities and when the county has maintenance responsibilities.
But this is the only one that I'm aware of where there's actually a physical city employee. There's somebody that sits in the lift operations
Correct,
center.
and that's why probably
Yeah.
they're looking at transferring some of the responsibilities back to the municipality. I don't know the answer from the top of my head. I would have to look into it, but this, like I said, this is a responsibility that's mandated by the Ohio Revised Code, and how does that transfer into reality? We'll have to look at it.
Right. I mean, I could see an unmanned bridge, and we have them all over the county. I don't know how many we have in the county, but a lot of them where the city is responsible for the maintenance. I get that, but this is unique in the sense that this is the only one where there's physically a person sitting there. They're 24/7, or how does Cleveland man this bridge?
I believe it's 24/7.
So there's somebody physically there all the time, which I think heightens the risk, may heighten our risk exposure should there be an injury or an incident. So I guess to that end, where are these discussions preliminary, I guess, Director, insofar as entering into a formal lease agreement? I can't believe we've gone this long without understanding what our liability and exposure here is, or who's responsible for what in a more formal document. So are these discussions, is this something that is kind of on a wish list somewhere, or are we in negotiations with Cleveland to understand this?
No, I wouldn't say we're in negotiations. I think it's just a wish list from.
So I guess to the law department, I know we're in transition but risk management is still risk management. Is there any way you can put this on, to the law department, put this on a docket to be addressed?
We could definitely look at it. Generally speaking, there's no ability for any of the parties to indemnify the other party. So in a situation like this, generally what happens is that each party has responsibility for their own negligent acts. So, for example, the city would have responsibility for their operations, and the county would have responsibility for liability arising out of the capital improvements. So that's how it usually works. I would have to look at this closely. I am not familiar with this particular location, but that's how it generally works.
I think we just need to solidify whatever the understanding, whatever the state law says and what's applicable. So both of us, not just us, but also the city understands where its exposure and liabilities are. Because I just don't want us at some point to be caught in a pinch because of some liability issue that we're not aware of right now.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well then, if there's no objection, I would just like to, I think Sonny is returning, so we can wait. Okay, I'm gonna offer a motion so that people can get paid for their work. And so I'm gonna move that we favorably recommend 2015-0024 to the full council with the recommendation that leadership consider placing it on the calendar for approval under second reading suspension.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Ayes have it, and it is so recommended.
Chairman, I'd like to have my name added.
Okay. We'll add Ms. Conwell's name to this resolution. And that brings us to Resolution 2015-0025. Ms. Janine.
Resolution number 2015-0025, a resolution making an award on requisition number 32019 to Shermer Construction, the amount not to exceed $899,902 for design-build engineering services for replacement of various culverts in various municipalities, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with said award in this resolution, authorizing the county engineer on behalf of the county executive to make an application for allocation from county motor vehicles $7.50 license tax fund in said amount to fund said contract, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective for the items as printed on the agenda in C 1 and 2.
Ms. Tewan.
Thank you. This project is actually a design-build project. Early on, as you guys know, in your administration, you gave me the authority for doing more projects design-build with alternate procurement methods. This is a smaller culvert, or they're two small culverts, and this is a perfect example where design-build actually helps us save money. My experience has been with some of these smaller culverts that you would almost pay as much for the design as you would for the construction of the project. So with the ability to do design-build projects, we actually spec'd out these two bridges to be replaced. And we publicly advertised for the project. And in this case, we received just one bid from Shermer Construction. They were under the 10%, or they were within the engineer's estimate limit. And this is a good example of how we can move projects forward and getting them replaced quicker and cheaper by using the design-build process.
Director, how much was the engineer's estimate on this project?
$820,000.
So it didn't get within the 10% by much.
That's correct. It was within, it's 9.744%. So it was within the 10%.
And, generally there's lots of contractors out there and people are hungry for work. Do we have any sense as to why nobody else bid on this project?
We've done a lot of work with Shermer Construction, and if anything, Shermer Construction has a niche where they really excel in certain size bridges. Shermer was the contractor for East 49th Street that we just recently opened in the city of Cleveland. They're good at these smaller structures where you can, basically bang them out real quick. Probably the reason why there was only one contractor is because it was on the smaller side. Some of the bigger bridge builders, they like the big projects, the multi-million-dollar projects, and this was not one of them. So 2 locations, under $1 million. It's really a specialty that not all bridge builders are going to want to do.
Do we have a sense as to why it was almost 10% over the estimate?
We didn't look in, Rich, did you review the items, or?
I did. Richard Opry from OPD. I'm the procurement manager. In terms of the estimate, I don't have anything specifically on their bid as to why it was $899,902. So I don't have anything specific to report on that.
And
But I do have 2 other no bids. So we had 2 vendors make responses. One in agreement with what Director Teeman said before, is that there was one engineering group that wanted to do it as an engineering project from scratch at a higher dollar amount, and they said that they weren't interested because it wasn't engineering. And another one was not ODOT certified, and they wanted to see the design before they made their bid, because they have to make a payment for it, so they wanted to see it and not pay.
And Director, was there an SBE goal on this project?
There's an SBE goal, sir, of 30%, which was met. 20% was processed on behalf of the Prime, which is also an SBE, and that's according to our requirements. And then also 10% was awarded to Cook Paving as a proper SBE.
Okay, so Shermer is an SBE itself, and so they get 20% credit for being the prime contractor.
That's
and
correct, sir.
then
They're a
they
certified SBE.
and they also got an additional 10%. So, okay, so that's pretty good participation. Okay, questions by my colleagues? Okay. What is the need for second reading suspension on this one?
They were in February. I guess 2 weeks would make a difference, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be approved under second reading. I would say generally the contractor would be anxious to get the contract in hand so that they can start ordering the material, and then he could start the demolition, but we're still in the early part of February, so there's 2 weeks should make a difference.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I think that there's not much controversy to this contract, and it is good to enable people to get moving. So I am going to make a motion to recommend Resolution 2015-0025 favorably, with a recommendation that leadership consider putting it on the agenda for second reading suspension. Is there a second? Okay, there is a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no, and it is so recommended. Is there any miscellaneous business?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Director. This dawned on me, on getting back to the bridge, and it looks like we'll be maybe 7% over. We're 6 now, and you said there's another amendment coming. Do you, when we go over like this, and there are unforeseen things, whether it's the items you mentioned, do you go back and look at the other bids to see if they maybe included it in their bid submission? Did they maybe foresee some of the things that the winner of the bid did not?
We don't necessarily go back and compare previous bids. What we do when we have line item bids like this one is, and not necessarily the culverts, is we'll look at each of the line items and see if there's an unbalanced bid for some reason. If one contractor, bids $65 on something, and somebody else, and the majority of the people bid $1 on it, it becomes obvious that the guy who bid $65 doesn't believe that quantity and thinks it's going to be much more. So we look at things like that to see if there's an unbalanced bid. When the contract is awarded and there's change orders, we usually classify them under owner requested change orders, utility conflicts, which usually go into the category of unforeseen conditions, and then we have an unforeseen condition contract or item, and then if there's any what's the term that we use, if there's an error in omissions, we identify it as such. So we usually go back and we look we categorize the change orders and where they fall in. If there's a lot of errors and omissions, we will that will be reflected in the review that we have for the designer. So that becomes an issue for future work.
Yeah, because the reason it just, so about 3 years ago, I was in a car accident, and I had to take, my insurance company said, take it to 2 repair shops. And I took it to 2, and they said, we're going with the lowest one. Well, the scope of work was different. So one was a lot lower than the other, but the other said, well, we're gonna need to replace these other components. And the insurance company said, we don't care, we're going with the lower one. Well, when the lower shop got under the hood, they figured out, oh yeah, we got to replace all these other things. At the end of the day, it wound up being more than the higher of the 2 bids initially. And I wonder if that happens here. You know, if you get, it seems to me from a layman's perspective, if in this specific project that additional steel was needed to balance balance the bridge, and the second bidder identified that,
Yeah.
and it wound up coming true, and the first one didn't, did they not purposely disclose it because they knew if they were at higher rate, they might not get the contract?
So you have to keep in mind, road and bridge projects are bid completely different than auto repair projects or vertical construction projects. We have a line item that says 45 square feet of sidewalk will be replaced, and you have a unit cost for that. So, you know, they might get in and it's more than 45 square feet, it might end up being 100 square feet, but you have that unit cost.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, did another contractor identify that you needed additional steel to balance? Or is it irrelevant?
It's a unit cost.
Okay.
Because they're bidding on the pounds of steel for it. If there's more, they're only bidding on what the plans say.
Okay.
So
the fact that this was discovered
Correct.
would have happened to anybody.
that's absolutely right.
So then maybe the question goes back to the designer, the engineer, who originally put the bid package together, and that's where you're talking about the E&O coming in?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, great. I'm new to the committee, so I'm
Just,
asking questions.
and Mr. Chair, if I can follow up, I thought there was a component to this that the assessment of how much steel they're gonna need to balance might even occur once you get into the project. Is that always foreseeable from a design? Or sometimes when you actually get into the actual building, that's when you determine actual balance?
Yeah, as far as the balancing goes, you can't necessarily go in and I think scientists would like to say that they can they can actually weigh what this center span is gonna be. But at the end of the day, it's an exact science. And it could be, how torqued one of the towers is. Not that that's bad, but it just, remember physics class and you had your vectors and your load distribution? That's really what it comes down to, is once it's in place and it's hanging from those cables, what are the actual loads on it? So you're absolutely right that until you actually get it in there and you know where it has to be balanced.
Ms. Cottonwell.
And through the chair to the director, and that's kind of, Councilman Greenspan asked what I had asked earlier, the additional amount and what impact did it create in this first bid? So you kind of, I think your explanation was good that in different projects, they don't, because you're only bidding out for a certain unit. This could have happened to any company, but I still would like to know. And I think you stated that you do look back just to make sure that these these additional amendments didn't have an impact on, so I just.
For the unbalanced bids, right? We can go back and verify that.
And that's just
there
what I
weren't
want
any.
to know.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
In spite of the further discussion, this item has been voted upon, so we remain in miscellaneous business. Is there any other miscellaneous business? Hearing none, has anybody signed in for public comment at this time?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask a question in regards to this committee. Is there going to be a change in time? Has that been clarified?
It has not yet been clarified, and I'm going to count on the leadership of the chairman to determine whether going forward it's going to be 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I think that's still in flux. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you very much, everybody.